Solo: A Star Wars Story came out just a few days ago. I've already had the chance to see it 2 times. I went with my buddies on Thursday night, and then earlier today, my whole family went. I got to take my son. It's his first time seeing a Star Wars movie in the theaters, so that was an absolute blast. If you haven't seen the movie yet, I put a spoiler review out yesterday, so you'll see that link right above up here, because in this video, I'm just going to dive into it, spoil every last detail that I can about the movie, at least that I can remember in this video. The way these work is that I hit record and I'm just going to talk through my full thoughts on it, no cuts, full Sean Chandler personality, uncensored from beginning to end. Before we get started, go ahead and tell me your thoughts down below in the comment section. What did you think about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Because this is a spoiler-filled review, tell me your spoilers, thoughts on all those details, and I've already given the warning on it. What did you think about Darth Maul? What did you think about Han Solo, where his name came from? All those little things sprinkled throughout the movie. Let us know your thoughts on it. Let's have a nice, lively discussion about all the details about this movie. So as I said in my previous review, I was not crazy about them announcing this movie. Like, I knew they were going to do stuff like this, but it just seemed like such a safe, obvious movie for them to do. And then they hired Lord and Miller, the guys that directed the Lego movie, 21 Jump Street, 22 Jump Street, to direct it. And I was not crazy about that decision either, because I just don't see how their style fits in the world of Star Wars, because they're so high energy, so overt in their comedy from everything we've seen from them thus far, that it just seemed like a very tone-wise, they just don't go together quite right. And if you're going to do a Han Solo movie, you certainly want some sarcasm and humor. You got to have some of that because that's Han Solo. But that's not the same thing as Lord and Miller's joke, insanity, self-referential, everything that they do. It doesn't seem like the perfect fit. So that seemed really odd to me. And so obviously last summer they were fired. Ron Howard, who seems like a very obvious safe pick to direct a Star Wars movie, he's hired, reshoots, they say 80% of the movie or something like that. And now that we've seen the movie, I don't know why I don't know what Lord and Miller were doing. I don't know why they were hired. I don't know what that different vision was, but this movie felt like a Ron Howard Star Wars movie to me that was written by Lawrence Kasdan. That was the other weird thing. They get Lawrence Kasdan and his son, the guys that did Raiders of the Lost Ark, or the guy that did Raiders of the Lost Ark, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and then you get guys that do improv, high energy. It just seemed like a weird mix. And then you say Ron Howard's now working with this Lawrence Kasdan script. And that makes a lot of sense to me. Like, that seems like a good pairing. And the movie that we got, I thought felt very cohesive. I did not feel at all competing visions. I didn't feel the improv, the insanity, or anything like that, which now I'm more curious than ever to see the Lord and Miller footage. Because watching this movie, there's maybe 2 or 3 lines that I thought, that was probably a Lord and Miller line. The one, it's all in the Kessel Run too, where Woody Harrelson and Beckett is this gun thing breaks out. He goes, my thumbs hurt. And then right after that, Han Solo does some maneuver where he drags on the ground and he goes, I learned this maneuver from the best pilot on Corellia. Was it Corellia? Was that right? And he did this. He was the best until he died doing this. Like, those 2 lines seemed like those could be Lord and Miller type lines. That doesn't sound like the voice that wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark as well as Empire Strikes Back. That's it, though. Like, I can't think of anything else in the movie that felt like Lord and Miller. So I'm just very curious. Like, I'm one of these people that's very skeptical of Kathleen Kennedy and what she's doing with all this, because the risks she's taking don't seem very wise. The chance and how safe she's going with some of these selections, all of it. I don't get what she's doing. The number of director issues that they've had behind the scenes, I'm nervous about it. And then having seen this movie, it's just only amplified, because what would Lord and Miller have done with this movie? But all in all, if you hadn't seen my previous review, I dug it. And having seen it 2 times, I dug it the second time too. I thought, as a Han Solo prequel movie, it feels a little bit like, did we need this? But as a movie that's in the Star Wars universe, that's not about the Force, it's not about the Empire, it's not about a rebellion, it's not about the First Order, it's not about the Republic falling. It's just set in the Star Wars world, in the criminal underworld, and it's a heist story. So parts of it feel very much kind of like a Western, in particular that train sequence. That's very much a you think in a Western, the train's going down, they come up with the stagecoach, this one, spaceship. So I dug all of that side to it and just had a good time with it. And it made me think there's potential in this world to tell. Like now I more so than ever want to see some sort of movie about the criminal underworld or TV show about the criminal underworld of Star Wars, which they've been talking about doing for 10 years now. Literally 10 years ago, they wrote 60 scripts for a Star Wars Underworld series that no one's ever read the scripts. No one's ever seen anything from it. So now more than ever, I would love to see something like that. And maybe Jon Favreau's working on a TV show. Maybe that's what we're going to get from him. With that said, I'm going to get started, and I'm going to go from beginning to end, talk about the movie, give my thoughts on it, all the different pieces. You'll know every thought that I have on it. And then once I'm editing this, I'll realize the thing I forgot to mention. Movie kicks things off, and you get long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and then it doesn't do an opening crawl, but it has some text on the screen giving us some background. I actually really dug that. Like as it was happening, I was like, this is a nice. I wish that Rogue One would have done this because it's not the opening crawl, but it feels reminiscent. It gives you the same, like going into a Star Wars movie. I feel like I'm supposed to get a little bit of exposition in that beginning. So I kind of dug it. The specific content of it seemed a little bit strange, that especially kind of setting up this world and the nature of it. I guess that's what you need to do, but it only sets up the opening scene of the movie because it doesn't. All the opening text stuff doesn't set up the movie other than the last line of "He wants to fly in the sky" or whatever it was. It just sets up literally the next 5 minutes that we're about to see. Kicks things off. Han's on the run with a speeder, runs in, meets. Khaleesi, or I guess Kira is her name in this one, and you find out that they're lovers. I went into the movie, I didn't know that. I didn't know that they were actually going to be full blown. He's a lovebird at this stage of his life, and he's got a girl that he's actually serious, monogamous with this person. I didn't know that going into the movie, and I was pretty surprised at how far they went into. Like, no, he is a guy that. He's all in. And so you hear from their dialogue that they're trying to get off the planet. They've got a scheme to get off the planet. And then as they're about to try and go with their scheme, they get captured, taken to Lady Proxima or something like that. It comes out and it's this big, very Star Wars-y type monster. I actually looked really good. Especially watching it the second time, I was like, yeah, they're getting good at making creatures that have moving faces that don't look like CGI things from the prequels or anything like that. I thought it looked really good. And he tries to talk his way out of it, pulls a thermal detonator out of his pocket. And as you're watching it, you think he goes and makes a clicking sound with his mouth. And you're like, wait, what's happening right now? And then the lady calls him out like, no, you just made a clicking noise with your mouth. And then he throws the rock through a window. Son, you realize that they're light sensitive, and that's why they're wearing the armor and they're underground. So they make a run for it. Goes into this little chase sequence where we get to really see him for the first time as someone driving something. Not fully a pilot, but driving something. You can see that, yeah, he's Han Solo and he can do stuff like this. And you learn through this, the girl, she's all in. She wants to go on adventures with him. They are serious about going to the cosmos, getting adventures, and they zip around. And there's a sequence in there where you kind of he has to get through these two buildings and pulls it on its side and kind of slides in. And you get kind of this sense of that's trying to figure out the things about Han Solo that were distinctives of him throughout the movies that you don't necessarily have on your front burner thinking about him. But the way it portrays it in a way where you go, oh yeah, that's right. Han Solo is known for coming up with these crazy things to do that somehow work out. And so right out of the gate, you see that's part of his personality, does his thing, almost works out. They get to the end of it, it gets stuck, which I thought was a nice little bit of a laugh there, subtle little joke. They get out, they run inside, and they're trying to hide. They get in line, and you hear them talking about going into the world, the dangers of it. Watching it the second time, you realize that they set up the Crimson Dawn in that opening sequence. Which we can get picked up by Crimson Dawn, which as the movie plays out, that's essentially what happens to her in the movie, and that's set up so nice little smart dialogue. So the things that happen are set up. They get to the front of the line, try and bribe the lady. She's kind of goes along with it, opens the door to let them in. As she's going, she gets grabbed, pulled back, and door shuts down. Han's, but no, I'll come back for you. And it's a little bit hard because you wonder if was he always we always assumed that he was more non-monogamous, this kind of playboy, person-to-person, kind of assume that about him. But really, everything we've seen about Han Solo, everything starting with A New Hope, he's totally into Princess Leia. From in that movie, he's clearly into her. And then they're all the way 35, 40 years later, whatever the exact time jump is going into Force Awakens, he's still into her. So everything we've seen is that he actually is kind of this he connects long-term monogamous. And so maybe our assumptions about him were just kind of wrong. And because it's not like he's any less cocky, arrogant in here. It just plays out a little bit different. So I think it gives an interesting spin on it because I never even thought about it in that sense of we've only really actually seen him as monogamous. Everything else was an assumption. So he's then off on this other side by himself, realizes stormtroopers everywhere. So he just goes for it. I'm going to enlist. I'm going to be a pilot. The guy in his dialogue says, yeah, you can be a pilot. Most people go to be infantry. If you can follow the rules, you can be a pilot. So he's like, I want to be a pilot because I'm going to come back here. Oh, that's, not many people say that. I actually really liked this guy, the draft guy on the other side. It was like very subtle type of character that was kind of like, had a little bit of a likability in his kind of, like just even saying something like, oh, don't hear that one too much. There you go. Just had a distinctiveness to him, the way that a character like this doesn't normally have a little bit of a spark to them. So then Han has enlisted. He is now an Imperial, whatever he would be, enlisted person. And then it does a 3-year, it cuts straight from you're going to be a pilot to him in the middle of just the shadiest, least sophisticated battle that you've ever seen in your life. And 3 years later, and he's running around, just shots everywhere, chaos. And he stumbles across his captain gets killed. And so he stumbles across the people that I guess is the new captain. And we kind of hear in the background, I didn't catch it the first time I was watching it, but they're scheming. They're talking about stealing equipment and they didn't mean to be there. Han doesn't notice this, so he just thinks the guy's in charge. The guy keeps him alive for the day. So the next day he's like, hey man, I'm trying to be a pilot. What can I do? And Woody Harrelson's just get out of here. Don't stick around here. And then we have the scene where Han's mouthing off to the guy that's in charge of him, aren't we the hostiles? Isn't their planet? And you would have thought he would get in a little bit more trouble for mouthing off like that. So the next scene, you see Han Solo walk up to Woody Harrelson as they're scheming. Woody Harrelson's scheming to leave the planet. And you just right off the bat kind of get the nice rapport between all these different characters as they're all smooth-talking criminals that talk their way out of things, have plans, and are trying to manipulate all the people. Right out of the gate, you get this. And you see Han, it's like, did he not pit, he calls out the guy yeah, unless you heal really quickly, you got a bunch of holes in your armor there, so you've been shot a bunch of times. I'm pretty sure you're stealing equipment, and I want to go with you. So Woody Harrelson is not. He seems a little bit more open to it, but the Thandie Newton's character. Actually, right now, if I'm looking down like this, it's because I have the Wikipedia page in front of me. I guess it's actually Beckett's wife. I didn't realize that was entirely clear that it was his wife in the movie. But according to Wikipedia, she was his wife. So his wife is like, no, we don't want him. We don't want him. We don't want him. So Han tries to blackmail him into forcing him to let him in. So Beckett just goes, all right, and this guy here is trying to desert. So Han gets thrown into the pit with the beast. And as I was watching it, I was like, oh, I think I know where this is going. I bet I know where this is going. And I was right. Chewie walks out covered in mud, and they get into a little bit of a fight, and then you learn that Han can actually... I can't do it. But the Wookiee language. And so they come up with a scheme because Han can say it just enough to say, let's have a plan. Let's work together to escape. So the stormtroopers can't hear above. Chewbacca's like, I will do that. And so then they kind of punch this little bar thing down. It falls down. Stormtroopers get crushed. You get kind of this stuff where it's like Chewie's throwing Han around and dragging him behind him. But a bunch of kind of nice little moments in there. And so they run up. Beckett and his crew are leaving. And you can tell that he's starting to endear himself to these band of criminals that want people to just get things done. And so the pilot guy, who is voiced by Jon Favreau, he's like, I'm starting to like this guy. The wife, still not crazy about this idea, but because there's a Wookiee in the mix, they're like, he's a good hired gun. So they come down, pick him up. And Han is now officially a rogue criminal joining their crew to do whatever this job is. There's a nice little scene between Han and Chewie where they basically Chewbacca says, "My name's Chewbacca," and Han's like, "That is way too long of a name for me to say that." Which reminds me, going back to our way about 5 minutes ago in the movie where Han was enlisting and we find out that he doesn't have a last name. His name is just Han. And he's no people, he's no group. And so then because he is alone and he is solo, the guy, charming little man, enlisting him, gives him the name Han Solo. So they announced about a year ago that we're going to find out what Han Solo's real name is. And I heard that and I was like, oh, this is a terrible idea. Like, what? This is the prequel issue that I have with these types of prequels, is that they answer questions I'm not asking with answers that I don't want. So Han Solo's real name sounds like a terrible idea for a movie. The way it plays out in the movie, I don't think we needed it, but I didn't hate it. Like, I didn't hear that and go, oh, this is horrible. I just went, okay, that makes enough sense in this context that I'm kind of okay with it, especially when you go, was it Kira? She's just Kira, just one name. And so it makes it plays out what other people only have the single name. So the idea that he now is given a second name because he enlisted, fair enough. Jumping back to our ship about to go on a job, they land, they have a nice little campfire chat where the wife is still like, we don't need these guys, we can get anybody else. Why are we taking them to do this job? And they have campfire discussions. The wife's like, this guy wants a girl. Chewbacca, we learn, is kind of trying to free his people. I was thinking that they were going to play that out a little bit more in the movie. It has a payoff in the movie, of course, that Chewbacca sees other Wookiees and wants to free them. But they have this sequence as you're watching and they're talking, and Chewbacca gives the longest set of things we've ever seen him do. I mean, I'd never had a stopwatch this is a phone, it has a stopwatch on it. But I've never been watching the movie, started the stopwatch and been like, mapped out how long Chewie's talked. But in the movie, he goes for a while and you start to realize that's probably the longest set of sentences Chewbacca's ever said in a Star Wars movie, or at least they've allowed him to say. And what you learn from it is that he wants to go and find his people. And so it seems like that needed to have a bit more of a payoff, or because that's set up, you have a scene later where he frees some Wookiees, and one in particular that he's kind of fighting people with and bonding with. And the scene is later that we'll talk about. It plays out that the message you get from it is that like Chewie is bonded with Han now. He's going with Han, and not in any sort of rejection of Wookiees, but he feels connected to Han. And so it kind of gives like a little bit of emotional little oomph in this big action sequence and showing that relationship built. But it seems like there was still some things that should have been tied off on what he was trying to do. So anyway, they go and do this job, and just kind of going into it, I'd say given where the story goes with the heist and the wife being like, we don't need them to go on this job, and we can get these other people to go on this job, and all the bickering back and forth, it feels like they didn't have a good enough reason. Like those pieces don't seem like they fit all together. That the wife was so opposed to him coming, but they didn't have anyone else. And then as you see the way the mission plays out, how are they going to unlatch this and pull this mission off if they didn't have Han and Chewie, if they didn't have several other people on it? Because I mean, they needed all those people. With Beckett by him, like the way it plays out, you've got Jon Favreau is flying the ship, and then you got the wife blowing up the bridge. If you don't have Han and Chewie, it's just Beckett having to strap all those cords down while shooting at people trying to take him out, and has to unlatch it. I mean, this is a horrible plan. The only reason that anyone survived is because Han and Chewie were there to make the plan work. So it seemed like there's some sloppy writing in that, unless the whole point was Beckett is horrible, which I don't think was what they were trying to say. So it seems like they didn't explain quite well why Beckett's plan was dreadful. Sequence takes place, and it's a great little sequence. Great fun. it's a Western and Star Wars at the same time. Like I mentioned before, it's the classic stagecoach robbing the train. It lasts the third act of Back to the Future Part 3, except it's Star Wars, except you have the technology and all sorts of fun things that can go along with it. And, just seeing Han and Chewie on a legit heist. There's something a lot of fun about that. Very nicely crafted sequence, as well as you have all the little things that can kind of go wrong, as you've got the Imperial troopers. They have success with that. And then other bandits show up, the Marauders that we'll talk about later on. They kind of get involved in the action. And so this leads to all kinds of trouble. And then the droid things kind of come out, so the wife ends up getting pinned down. She blows herself up. One of the Marauders shoots Jon Favreau in the back, so he's dying. So Han Solo has to jump up, and for the first time we actually see him pilot something properly. And they, right off the bat, they're like, well, you actually are pretty good at this. So Chewbacca is down by the coupler, breaks it off just in time before it goes off the cliff. Once again, who's going to do? Was Beckett going to be the person doing that? It seems some bad planning here. So they're flying, and the Marauders have got some cables on it too. They're heading towards a mountain, and Beckett is like, don't cut it, don't cut it, don't cut it, don't cut it. We got this, we got this, we got this. And Han's like, no, you don't. We're going to die. And so he cuts off the deal. The fuel all falls down. Very cool little explosion that topples down a little mountain, and they go off somewhere else. Beckett punches him. He's mad, like, you don't understand. There's Crimson Dawn. They'll track us down. They'll kill us. All sorts of issues kind of with all of this stuff. And, which I kind of like, it's one of those ones we go, so why didn't he say some of this stuff beforehand? Like, why? Like, I understand that they're new to the mission, but you'd think you'd give a little bit more information than zero information, especially if you have a terrible plan. So it seemed like several of these things you probably should have had a little bit more communication kind of going on. And Beckett's like, I'll go talk to him. It's our only chance to stay alive. And Han's like, I'll go with you. In which case he's like, no, don't do that. You'll be sucked into this life if they don't kill you. And Han's like, I'm all in, which seems like a very Han thing to do. Like, yeah, I'm either in it or I'm not. So they go up to this, or they don't, like the ship thing kind of shows up. They go into it. Beckett, don't talk to anybody. So Han's trying to look down, not talk to anyone. And Kiara walks up, and I liked the character's not great. She's not super flashy in what they do with her, but what I appreciated that they did with her is that they didn't go too far in any direction, and it feels like everything that was true about that opening sequence and their relationship stayed true to them. But as they're survivors, they don't want to die. They're going to do what they need to do to make it. And they went off in two different directions. One of them joins the Imperials, becomes a soldier, and the other one gets sucked into a very vicious underworld where she has to become kind of a terrible person. But it doesn't change her actual loyalties to people. She still wants Han. She still wants all that to work out. It's just a lot more complicated for her than it is for him. And I appreciated that about the character, that even in her betrayals, even when she abandons him, none of it is she's gone full villain. None of it is gone, just seems different from who she was before. So I like the way that was put together. And you can see that there's still kind of the spark between the two of them. And he's much more optimistic because he doesn't know everything that she knows. And you can just see the sadness as she realizes that they're in all of her lines, especially seeing it a second time, you realize that they don't have a future. She knows they have no future, and she's telling him that from the beginning. It's the past. Like, yep, you don't have to worry about that. Yep, I'm not on that planet anymore. But there's no, like, he's not hearing what she's saying, doesn't want to hear it. He's thinking, if I can just sweep her off her feet or something like that. All the time she's knowing, like, no, I'm in this. We're dead if I leave. Thought that was nice. So then they go in and we meet kind of the villain of the movie. He's not really the villain of the movie, but of sorts he's antagonistic. Voss, Dryden Voss, played by Paul Bettany, and I like this character quite a bit. If you're just talking about like great villains, of course not, because he's not in the movie enough. His function in the story's not big enough. But it's this guy with this just kind of weird, odd personality that's like seems to have a very legitimate compassion as he's talking to people. Like, did you want any hors d'oeuvres? Like, did you want anything? Oh man, I can see you got beat up. That's pretty rough. But we're in a bit of a pickle, and I can't let people get away with that. I might have to kill you. and like just has he like goes very quickly between like, if I got to kill you, I'm very fine killing you, and do not make like he's just so extreme in whether his compassion, his lack of concern, or his I will kill you with its anger if you make excuses. Very nicely done, and you can only do that if you have someone like Paul Bettany that can. He doesn't feel like he's overcooking it. He doesn't feel like it just feels like this guy that's this very odd personality of extremes in the way he deals with people. And I really dug that about the way it kind of played out. And as I'm reading this, like literally as I'm talking to you, I just happened to note I didn't realize this about this. I didn't know Paul Bettany was in the movie until I thought I saw him in the trailer. It was like, I don't think he's in this movie. And I saw the movie. I was like, well, that's definitely Paul Bettany. Like, how did I miss that? And I guess I realized he was originally played by Michael K. Williams, who had to be recast with the reshoots that were done, and he had other work that he was doing. And so I didn't realize that he was that was the character. I didn't, which is interesting because Michael K. Williams is very different of an actor, a different vibe and type of things than what Paul Bettany is. It's fascinating what that might have been if it had been Williams instead of Bettany. And I really liked what he did, but it would have been such a different type of character if it had been him. So that's fascinating to know that how different kind of they went with the character on that one. Anyway, so he's basically planning on killing them for their failure, and they're like, there's no place to get more of this stuff. And you can just see Han as the smooth talker that will talk his way to it, just keep talking until he can find something. So he's like, what if we get unrefined? Like, where would you get unrefined? And then, well, you could get it here. Yeah, you could get, well, where would we refine it? You just hear Chewie go, roar, roar, and like piece together this plan throughout the whole thing to like make it happen and figure it out. I love the way it kind of played out, the interactions as they're all people in a bad situation that have to figure this thing out. And so if you can figure out a little plan in there, hey, let's give it a shot. And at the end of it, they come up with a plan and they decide Kara's got to go with them to kind of make sure things are done right. The big thing they're missing, they need a ship. So she knows a guy, Lando Calrissian. So they fly off to wherever Lando is at, and he's in the middle playing cards. Han thinks he can take him in cards, and this is our introduction to Lando. So a lot of people always wanted Donald Glover to play Lando, and a bunch of people are saying, Lando's the best part of the movie, Donald Glover's the best part of the movie. And I mean, he just nails it. He just had absolutely captured it. He's amazing. And Alden Ehrenreich, he's good, but he doesn't feel like Han Solo at certain times. But Lando feels, both of them, they're kind of equal to me. Both of them feel like they're not the same characters, the person we saw before. I also never, and not in any attack, hate, or anything towards Donald Glover, I've just never been on the crazy Donald Childish Gambino train that everyone else on Twitter seems to be. And I really enjoy him and watched Community and dug all of that. But some people absolutely love Donald Glover in a way that I'm just not quite there. Like I don't see what you guys are seeing to be totally enthralled with him. And so I thought he was good in the movie. Didn't feel like the same person I saw in Empire and in Return of the Jedi. So that was kind of my take on it. And I having seen it 2 times, I don't know what other people are seeing. We're like, it's so him. Certainly a couple of the lines that he delivers sound exactly like Billy Dee Williams. There's a few lines that are just, the voice of that, it just nails it. The other stuff, I just didn't. I feel like I'm seeing a different character that has the same qualities that Lando. So they play the game, and what we learned through this is that Han he's legitimately good at cards, and that Lando is a cheater, and that Han seems to have legitimately won the Millennium Falcon from him 2 different times, but at the same time, Han is lying in his own ways, in which case he did not legitimately win the Millennium Falcon from him. So he loses because Lando cheats. So then it just turns out Kira talks him into it. He's like, oh yeah, I've retired, but if the price is right. He sees Beckett, they kind of barter back and forth, some nice little criminal underworld. Like that's the stuff that I dug about this movie. that you're spending time with the scoundrels of the world of Star Wars from beginning to end, and they're all people that are looking to cheat each other. They're all people that will lie to each other, that they'll partner up, they'll be best friends until they're going to shoot you in the back. These little things, interactions are what I kind of love about it, and it fills out a little bit of that dynamic of Empire Strikes Back. Like you see what was going on with Han and Lando in that movie, much more so at a different phase of their life, kind of going on. You can kind of see it a little bit better there. So anyway, they end up, we're introduced then to Lando's droid, L337. I guess I remember the 37. L337. She has some funny lines. There's a couple of them where they're on the Millennium Falcon and Lando goes, "Do you need anything?" And she goes, "Equal rights." I thought that like just the delivery of the line and the timing of it is perfect. And perhaps maybe actually I said before that there weren't many things in this movie that felt like Lord and Miller. Perhaps this droid is Lloyd and Miller in the movie. I could see this being one of their inventions, and the timing of that joke feels like something that they would do that I thought was really nice. In general, the idea that Lando has a droid that's obsessed with freedom and equal rights and running her mouth constantly about all of these different things seems a bit odd. That doesn't seem quite right. And the characters, it feels so overplayed because it's not just that's part of the personality. You see, C-3PO is nervous all the time, and she has a bent towards freedom and freeing people and the injustice of the slavery of the droids. It's not that. It's a front burner. Every conversation with her, every line with her, Lando says, "Do you need anything?" And she, without hesitating, goes, "Equal rights." It feels really out of place in Star Wars. It feels like very odd character to kind of put in there that feels like a character that you have in a Lord and Miller movie, in a comedy. In this movie, it seemed off and out of place for the most part. So they head off. The Millennium Falcon is, I guess, impounded, so they have to break in. Beckett cuts the cord for them to be able to get up on the ship. They take off. Han's trying to learn a little bit about flying. The movie slows down a little bit right here, where it's this midsection as they're getting the crew together. And none of the sequence, like each sequence in itself, I thought was good. But in general, it just turned into, after the train section, let's talk about... let's talk about, everyone died. This job was important. We're going to be on the run. Then we're talking to Kira about their new lives. Then we're talking to Paul Bettany about this new plan that we have. Then we're talking to Lando, and then we're on the ship and we're talking about the Millennium Falcon. And then Han and Kira are talking about their relationship, and they start kissing. That's my daughter's favorite scene in the movie. I took my 4-year-old to see it. That probably wasn't a great idea to do that. That was a lot of homework. Probably not fair to the audience with me to take her to the movie. So they have this kissing scene, and as soon as they stop kissing, my 4-year-old daughter goes, it starts making loud kissing noises in the theater. Sorry if the audience of people that saw that movie with me, that I brought my daughter that was too young for the movie. Sorry about that. So then they're talking about that, and then they're talking about the Kessel Run. A lot of talking scenes kind of in a row right here, and that's one of the big issues with the movie is that it seems to kind of do big, you'll have an action sequence, and then we talk a lot, and then a big, long action sequence, then a bunch of talking, setup, and then as soon as they go for this heist that we're about to get to, I mean, it's a heist, it's a riot, it's a shootout, it's a chase through space, it's a battle with it's a long set of things. And they kind of happen there. And so that's, when you're talking about pacing and uneven and clunky, that's the stuff, that's what what I mean when I talk about things like that just speeds up and slows down so much. So we get this other scene, like I said, this kissing scene we talked about. And once again, Han is, hey, let's just the two of us, let's take our ship. And every line that she's saying is, if you knew what I'd done, if you'd see me in the proper light. And then Beckett is talking to Han afterwards, and he's like, you cannot trust, you do not know who she is. And he's like, no, I know her. I know her better than anyone. He's like, no, like you don't, like you know who she was. You don't know who she is. And everyone is telling him this. He just has this blind spot. And this is where I think some people will be like, is this what Han is like? Because he's this lovebird, so early on, blinded by love to who she is. And it's a little bit interesting the way that kind of plays out of portraying him not really even differently, but in a different, realizing that that's just maybe who he was, much more of the monogamous lovebird than we ever realized. So they get to the planet, and their kind of plan involves Kira going in as kind of this official, and Han and Chewie are in handcuffs. And then Beckett walks out with the same disguise that Lando wears in Return of the Jedi going to Jabba's palace. I didn't like that at all. The inherent nature of this movie is that it's setting things up in Easter eggs. It's Easter egg the movie because it's, so how did Han get the Millennium Falcon? How did he meet Chewie? How did he meet Lando? That's what the movie is in a lot of ways. And so you're already kind of playing your hand heavy when it comes to the Easter eggs and the see, and answering questions. That's what the movie is. And so when you start adding things in that really no one's asking, because people want, well, how did he get the Millennium Falcon? Did he cheat? Did Lando cheat? What was the scenario there? That's interesting. Where did Lando get the idea to wear that costume in Return of the Jedi? I don't know that anyone has ever asked that question. I don't know that anyone's ever wanted the answer to that question. But now we know. Now we know the answer to that question. So those are prequels answering questions I wasn't asking with answers that I don't want. That's what I'm talking about. That is an explicit example of the stuff I don't want in prequels that made its way into this movie. So they go in, eventually kind of things break out. Kira beats someone up with the training that she got from Voss, and Beckett does his gun swirly thing, takes out a room full of people, and Han and Chewie are making their way through the hallways. L3 then is told to kind of run the computers and stuff, and removes the restraining bolt from a droid. The droid's like, what do I do now that I'm free? And she's like, just be free people. She gives that instruction to the droid, not meaning to start a riot, not meaning it as this grander purpose. The droid takes it as, oh, now my job is to free people. And the droid starts freeing the other droids and saying our purpose is to free droids. And this leads to one of them walking over to a big button, pushes the button, and then everyone at this mining colony, chains fall off, necklaces fall off, riot breaks out, and suddenly L3 is like, I'm a revolutionary, I've found my true purpose. That feels pretty kind of out of place, like a weird direction to kind of go with that. Like I can see what they're trying to do, but at the same time, feels odd. It's an odd direction to play so heavy-handed with it. Wasn't crazy about that. So then Han and Chewie are going down the hallways. Chewie sees some Wookiees that are being enslaved and being poked with a stick. So he basically tells Han, I'm going to go save the Wookiees. That's just what I'm going to do. Han's like, we got a mission. And as soon as Han realizes that Chewie's definitely going to go his other way, he's like, all right, fine. I got to go do my job. Spaza turns around like, here, take this stick. Hopefully I'll see you again. And they go their separate ways. In Chewbacca, this is some of the most fun Chewbacca we've ever seen, as he's just tearing guys to pieces. And there's a scene right before this, I guess, where they're in an elevator and Han and Chewie are there. You see Chewie hold up the guy's arms. And so you see Chewie trying to free all these Wookiees and beating them up. And so he makes a bunch of Wookiee friends, beating people up. Han has to go grab these 11 canisters by himself with a riot breaking out. As he's pushing it down the hallway, he lines back up with Chewbacca and these other Wookiees who join up with him. And they make it outside. I mean, full out wars kind of going on. Get this nice little scene where Lando is, I should call it a bit more mixed scene. Lando's kind of doing his chronicles and shooting like a book of himself of sorts. And what I think some of that stuff I think is where, and maybe that's maybe there's more Lord and Miller. As I talk through it, maybe I'm noticing more little Lord and Millerisms perhaps that are in the movie. But, it feels a little bit like someone's doing a bit about Lando. Like let's have fun. What's like a funny thing that Lando might do? Well, what if he was making a book? Yeah, let's do that. And like you're riffing back and forth and you come up with this idea where he's just now recording a book of himself. I mean, there's like, what's the equivalent of that in Empire? What's the equivalent of Lando sitting there with his feet up? And then we came to a planet. I didn't find it very enjoyable. Like, I just don't know what what we've seen that's like that in any of the other movies. It just feels off. It doesn't feel like Lando to me because it's so kind of far into a let's make a little joke here type thing. So he realizes a riot's going on, so it kind of joins in to try and get them out. And as L3 is escaping, L3 gets shot, collapses. Lando runs out to kind of rescue her. And he's kind of losing it because, this is his lady friend right here. Chewbacca actually has to run over and help them escape. Lando gets wounded, shot himself a little bit. Chewie runs off, grabs them. They're trying to get in the thing. The Wookiees are about to run off the other way, and they're like, hey, Chewie, come with us. And as I talked about before, you kind of have a nice little moment. Like these are the types of moments in movies like this that I like, where you start to understand the mentality of Chewie, that he told us before his life is about freeing his people and finding his clan. And then now Han is his family and his clan, whatever the word was that was used in the movie. And so he doesn't go with them. He, of course, wants to free them, wants to do everything to help them, but they're free now. They're safe now. And I'm with Han. So those are little moments I think work really nicely. At the same time, I didn't feel like, because of the way that their escape happened at the beginning, it's not that Han did something explicitly heroic to free Chewie. It wasn't something in that you would get this distinct sense of the life debt, that this is why Chewie is committed to Han. And it seemed like they needed either to add a little more detail into that, or give something in the movie that explains why Chewie, who in the movie states, I am all about the Wookiees over there, I am about saving Wookiees and finding my people, shifted to, of course I freed them, but I'm staying with Han. And I think we needed a little bit more on that particular point. So then they get in the ship. As they're getting in the ship, and even the Wookiees help to carry the stuff up and everything. They're very nice Wookiees. They're taking off, and we see the canisters, and they're looking bad. These canisters of explosive, unrefined stuff are looking like they're in trouble, which is why we needed the fastest ship in the galaxy, and they're taking off, and Lando's like, we can't make it. Just it's a matter of time. We cannot make it because it takes 20 parsecs to do this. We don't have the time. We need to drop this stuff. And I was like, no, we can't. We can do it a lot faster than that. And all we have to do is cut through. And he comes up with this crazy scheme to do the Kessel Run faster than anyone has ever done it before. And all we have to do is attach L3's head to it. In the middle of all this, Imperials show up because a riot broke out behind them. And so we get a nice chase that has some music in it. It's a nice time to talk about the music. I loved that this movie seemed to intentionally sprinkle in a lot of classic Star Wars music. I dug it. And they did different versions of it. They took these themes that were associated with Han, associated with heroic Star Wars moments in the movies that he was in, and they would, the first time he sees the Millennium Falcon, it does a version of the Star Wars theme that's different. It has a very different vibe. Probably, I think it had a different tempo to it, but it can very much had this powerful moment with that music played the way it was played as Han is looking at this ship that he's immediately enamored with. I think it worked out nicely. And that goes back to this sequence as well, where the Millennium Falcon is being chased by TIE fighters and TIE bombers and having to avoid stuff. Of course, hearkening back to Empire Strikes Back in the asteroid field, which has, or I think is some of my favorite and most vibrant musical not best themes or songs, but music that just elevates the sequence that you're watching. As he goes through the asteroid belt and then, like, as all these notes are hitting in that sequence, I think it's so powerful. The music is such a character in that sequence as he's flying through all this stuff that it's excellent use of music. And some of those themes were in this sequence, and I thought it worked great, very nicely as he's flying through all these different things. As they have to rip L3's head off, plug it in once all of our TIE fighters have been taken out. We talked about the jokes that kind of happened in there earlier in this. They escape, and then they realize they're going to some weird place off the map, and they're waiting for L3 to figure out what they're mapping out the whole thing so that they can get out of this place. And then it goes into this section. I did not care for where they went after the TIE fighter part. I thought was pretty cool. And then there's big space monster and a gravity well. And this is where it just kind of lost me a little bit. In my other review of it, one of the things I talked about is I was watching it and I was thinking, like, this would have been really cool as a 8-episode, 10-episode mini season on Netflix. You just do a Netflix mini season of when Han met Chewie or something like that. And you just think through each of these little things that kind of happen in it, happen so fast in the movie that you could have spent more time with Han and Kira at the beginning of the movie. Have a whole episode dedicated to that. You can have a whole episode dedicated to Han as this officer in the 3 years of his life. You can do an episode of the train sequence. You can see how it plays out and get more character moments in it, get to build up this relationship with Chewie to understand a little bit better why there's this life debt in there. And the immediate kickback on some of this would be budget. Can you do, this is the most expensive Star Wars movie to date. But it doesn't need to be. You watch this movie, the budget's not on screen. It's simply the budget for this movie, the $250 million, this is not a $250 million movie with so much of what they did. Because there's not a bunch of big, gigantic action sequences in it. There's not a big, expensive cast for the movie. The movie is so expensive because they reshot 80% of the movie. Its production issues is what happened. Because you think about the big sequences, there's the train sequence, which that's a cool sequence, but there's ways to do train sequences that aren't insanely expensive. That's not going to be something that's going to drive up the budget crazy high. And then you have this riot and this space sequence, but it's just not a movie packed with big, gigantic, expensive things in it. And so you think through the movie, this sequence feels like they had to take it to that next level. So what do we do to make it big budget, earn our budget? There's a big monster in space and a gravity well. And I think it cheapened the movie. And it cheapened the Kessel Run, the legend of, because when you thought about the Kessel Run, you're thinking, he's a great pilot and he's flying through this thing and we've seen him fly through asteroids and he's in a ship that can go fast and he's good enough that he can navigate narrow things, like driving down a windy road fast. He's the guy that can do that in space. And then you watch the movie and what it means that he ran the Kessel Run faster than anyone else. It means he went off into a crazy zone and a big monster chased after him, and then there was a gravity well that he was able to escape the gravity well. That's not exactly what I wanted, and the one they could have done on the budget of a TV show where you don't need a big monster and gravity well, it's just kind of the model that they already have in the computer for the show of the Millennium Falcon and some asteroids flying through it or something like that, or through clouds. The cheaper version of it, I think, would have been a lot better and more exciting. And so they're going through it and they go, what if we take this fuel? And Lando's like, yeah, you can't put it in there, but you can put it there. If you do this, maybe we can escape. They go to do it. And then as soon as they charge it to go to hyperspace, it looks like it's about to work. And then the Millennium Falcon makes that classic, the Millennium Falcon dying sound that we heard so many times in Empire Strikes Back, which was amazing. You get that little tease of it as the engine's getting ready for it. And then it shoots and escapes. I dug that part. I dug that part to it. Oh, and I guess another one you have to talk about in this sequence is Kira's the original co-pilot in it, and she clearly doesn't really know what she's doing. She's knows some piloting stuff, but she can't do a ship like this. And so as soon as she's like, it starts looking for something, she just kind of steps in, takes hold of it. Han's like, how long have you known how to fly? Like, wow, 190 years old. You look great. And just right in this moment, they're just right. The two of them have this nice bond relationship. They work really nicely together. Chewie just steps in. Han's the guy that wants someone that just steps in, knows what they're doing. He's like the only person that seems competent in him or whatever. And they just go for it, and it just happens. And so they escape and land immediately on our planet where we're doing our little trade-off here. And once again, to this movie having some throwbacks to kind of Westerns and things like this. That was the big real climax of the movie, is what kind of happened there, is the actual heist. And there's a little bit more action and stuff that happens as we go into the final segment of the movie, but it's very much Western in all right, we've got this stuff and we got to trade it, but there's other people involved, and how are we gonna make it so that we can get it to the right people but we don't get killed? Very Western type. So even the planet they're on, we get sand and things like that. It felt a little bit like a Western. So they start refining the stuff, and Beckett and Han are talking. They're walking up to go check it out, and then we realize the Marauders are there. And you get this nice little moment where, or actually right before this, as they land there, Han's like, that was a lot of fun. He grabs Lando by the arm, and Lando's like, I hate you. Han goes, I know, nice little callback in a totally different direction, but kind of a nice little way to do that callback. Because if you had Qi'ra say, I love you, and he goes, I know, it would have been horrible. Like, people would riot if that had happened. But Lando saying, I hate you, and he says, I know, with a big grin on his face, that was a nice way to set it up. Anyway, so Han and Beckett are confronted by the Marauders. Han tries to talk his way out of it. We've got a ship over there with 40 mercenaries. I just snap my fingers. They're going to come over here and take all of you guys out. And then Lando takes off and flies off. And Han goes, all right, Beckett, you do your thing. And nice little moment. And here's where I in ways I think this movie would have worked better if they weren't playing Han and Lando. If these were other characters with similar qualities, I think the movie would be better received by a lot of people. In that, like, even as he's going, if I just snap my fingers, they'll come over here. It doesn't feel like Harrison Ford is Han at all. Like, there's nothing about the way he does any of this that feels like younger version of the guy that we know before. Smart talking, quick talking, we're trying, all that stuff. That's very Han in the broad sense, but you don't feel like you're watching Han from the previous movies. So Marauder person takes her helmet off, and we realize, oh, it's a girl. And as that happened, I was like, is this a character I should know who, like, what am I supposed to know? Like, I was a little bit confused as it happened where they were going. It played out weird to me. Because it seemed like it was a character reveal, but the reveal was it's a girl that's really young. But not so young that you immediately go, oh, there's a child in there. It's just young enough that you're like, what am I looking at? So she goes on to explain that, you know, the really bad people, you can't let these people have this stuff. They are just destroying planets. They're the enemy. They are bad people. You can't let them have this. Little allusions to that they're rebelling against something. And in this, we also see Warwick Davis, of course, classic Star Wars actor. Warwick Davis has to be in these things. So Warwick Davis is there. I love that little nugget. Han goes out to Beckett and he goes, we can't give this to Crimson Dawn. Like that, they're bad. These are bad people. We gotta do the right thing here. Beckett's like, no, man, I'm gonna run. I can't do what you're talking about. And they have kind of a little back and forth. Han's got a plan, tells him the plan. Beckett, I'm just not going to do it. And then it cuts back over to Qi'ra talking to our Marauder girl. And Qi'ra tells her, he's going to help you. He's going to do what he can to help you. And like, those are the little moments. Those are the details of the character that just made me, I liked the subtlety of the character, that it's not really overt what her motivations are, where she's going. But if you look at the movie as a whole, it's consistent. The character makes decisions that fall in line with what we know about her and what she seems to value, but at the same time, where she is at life and the things she fears and the things she's done, all that stuff. So I like the way that even these little subtle lines with her played out. So then we go into kind of our final little sequence of the movie as Han goes up with all the stuff, takes it to Voss, and he's kind of playing out this. What happened to Voss asks, what happened to Beckett? And they kind of go throughout this whole story. And once again, Voss is showing kind of this compassion, like, oh, I'm very sorry about your loss. And just the way that the interaction plays out, where it's like, here you go, here's your stuff. And Voss is like, can you bring me some? I'd like to see some. And Han's like, oh, there's this dangerous stuff. I don't know. But it's just even the way Bettany says all of it. The character, the way this character that's not a big character, not exaggerated, super played out, not a great villain in the industry, but as a good character interacting with characters, I liked what they did with this character, which, like, as I said earlier in this, and as I realized as I was talking to you guys, fascinating what the character originally was with Williams in the part. So Han walks over, hands it to him, and he's like, well, this looks great. How did you do this? He's like, what do you mean? It looks real. Like, I would believe that this was the real stuff. How did you do this? And Han's like, what are you talking about? And he stands up and, well, my informant told me. And Han's like looking at Qi'ra like, what did you do? What did you do? And it's the other person in the mix that could have betrayed. I was wondering, is it going to be Lando? Lando wouldn't do something. Who's it going to be? It's Beckett. Beckett is the one that's betrayed him, which falls in line with everything who Beckett has been up to this point in time in the movie. So it doesn't feel out of character for him to do this. So they start interacting back and forth, and they're like, Han, you don't think things through. You don't realize people change. And Han did. Han thinks ahead, and he had a legitimate plan. He's like, all right, if Beckett doesn't go along with me, Beckett's going to betray me. So he got it figured out, has this plan. So then Voss's men go to like raid where the fuel stuff's supposed to be, open it up, they're empty, the Marauders jump them, take them out. We realize, no, this is the reason the fuel looked really good in your hand, Voss, is because Han brought you the fuel. He was a man of his word. He didn't do anything wrong. Han has followed through on what he said he was going to do, handed you the fuel, but because you believed the informant guy, who was technically telling you the truth about what Han's plans are and all of this, Han just was thinking, triple informant stuff, triple betrayal and all of it, assuming other people are going to be dishonest. And so all this plays out really nicely. But Beckett's the guy with the gun still in the room, so he's like, Wookiee, you're with me, grab the fuel, we're getting out of here. They leave. And so then a battle breaks out between Voss and Han. And you can see, it seems like in this moment, Voss is like, maybe we should rethink our arrangement here. And you can see in this moment that Voss probably legitimately is like, man, I wish I could have done work with this guy. I think I like this Han guy. You can see that if the world had played out differently, he would have loved to have this scoundrel on his side with his crazy, insane plans, his way to talk things out. He probably really did like him. However, in this situation, they've got to kill each other. So they're battling each other. Cara joins in the mix, and she ends up taking out Han. He's on the ground, and everyone has their weakness, and you think that she's about to kill him. You're like, is this where this is going? She turns around, gets into a battle with Voss, and she ends up taking Voss out. And in the moment, you're like, is she saving Han? Like, we know it's definitely not going to be that straightforward. It doesn't look like she's going to die. It seems like she's made it. But he dies, and you can feel in the scene something's not right. Like, we can feel it as the audience, but it seems like Han still can't see it. He just sees her as the person that he knew from before. And so they're talking like, yeah, it'll be great. Oh, we need some money, though. We got to give the fuel to the Marauders, so we need our money. I'll collect these jewels over here. You run ahead to stop Beckett so that the fuel goes to the right people. You go do the right thing, Han. I'll grab these and we'll meet up right afterwards. And you're like, ooh, I see what happened. She didn't kill Voss just because he was a bad guy who was going to kill Han. She killed him because this is how she's going to level up in the company and get a new job and get a promotion. And so he goes down to save the day, and it cuts to her picking up his ring, signals to it, and something pops up on the screen. You're like, are we about to have a big reveal? Okay, so clearly she's not a good guy. She's not going to go with Han, which we already knew. She's either going to die or turn out to be a bad guy. She didn't die. Looks like she's a bad guy. So someone comes up and you hear someone talking. And as I'm watching it, I'd had someone tell me in the comments, I had someone say, Darth Maul's in the movie. And I went, I don't know how they pull that off in this movie, but it doesn't seem like they're lying. It just seems like someone being a jerk in the comments trying to spoil it for me, which of sorts they did. But it plays well enough in the movie. I wasn't thinking throughout the whole movie, is Darth Maul going to show up here? Is he going to show up here? So I'm watching it, and as soon as there's like a cloaked figure, like, I wonder who... This is where it happens right here. This is it. And it was. That's where Darth Maul shows up in the movie. And he pulls off. I guess they kind of had to overplay it a little bit to make it clear to everyone. Because if you haven't watched the Clone Wars, you wouldn't notice he's got robot legs. And you'd be like, didn't this guy die before? So you got to do things to make it clear he's got the Force and he's got a double-sided lightsaber. So he's like grabbing his lightsaber with the Force and spinning it around while talking to her. Feels a little bit like you're just trying to find a way to convince us that this is Darth Maul. But hey, I'm digging. I'll say this about this scene in the movie. If they were to announce they were doing another, like a sequel to this movie, whether it's a spinoff or maybe this is what the Boba Fett movie is. If they were to say, this next movie we're doing, Han Solo 2, this Boba Fett movie, it's a continuation of where that movie left, with that stuff we left off with Crimson Dawn. That's what this movie is. Where Kira's coming back and you're getting Darth Maul as this crime syndicate lord. I would be more excited about that movie today than I was about Han Solo until about 2 weeks ago. At this moment, where I'm at this moment right now, or I would go crazy bonkers excited if they said I mean, that's exaggerated. That's probably not entirely true. If they said that one of these TV shows they're doing is Crimson Dawn, the TV show, like that's, or they're kind of like the main evil rival crime people in it, and we've got our main crime people that we're following that are protagonists that are less evil than them, but they're still evil, all that fun stuff. If they said that, if they announced that, I'd totally dig it. I want to see more of where this is going. And or even if they announced a book, I'd be excited. But normally I'm not too excited about most of the books. I'm not crazy about a lot of the Star Wars books. I'd be excited about that one. So I want to see more of where this is going. Like I as a little Easter egg, it's not a post-credit scene, but it's a post-credit scene type, here's where this is going type moment. That way the Marvel post-credit scenes feature like this. Like this, I could even imagine a scenario where in the movie, they just show her leave and you see her with the ring leave. And then this could have been played out like a post-credit scene. You could see very easily how a re-edit would do something like that very easily. Anyway, that's just speculation on my part. I dug it. So back down to our Beckett's running off with the stuff. Han shows up. He cuts him off. And Beckett goes into another, he's trying to lecture him like, you don't understand that, and Beckett's like, you're nothing like me. And it seems like he's trying to lecture him and tell him like, you don't understand. That's why you're not going to make it. And Han shoots first. Very clearly reference to all of the issues scandal from before. Han shoots first. He shoots the guy. And I think it's a nice balance to much of what was in the movie before. Because what things in the movie before, I didn't mention this before, there's a scene where Han and Kira are talking, and she keeps trying to say, this can't happen, it can't happen, it's not going to happen. We're not getting back together. And it's not because I don't want it, it just can't happen. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm a scoundrel, we can be on the run, I can do this. And she says to him, look, what I understand about you is what no one understands about you. And what's that? It's that you're the good guy. And it's another one of those ones like Han is the lover bird that you see in this movie. That likewise, this line, you're the good guy. If you take it through what we actually know about him, in this context of where it's happening, where you're seeing actual scoundrels, you're seeing actual criminal, evil crime boss people, and you realize Han Solo, he'll shoot Beckett first. He'll shoot Greedo first. There's a bunch of things that he'll do. At the end of the day, when he sees Marauders, like they have to have the fuel. You can't give the fuel to the bad guys. Like he can see right from wrong. He's not just in it for the money. He's not just this evil guy. He knows what he should and shouldn't do. And so this little line that they have in there, that you're the good guy, like it in the context of the movie, it makes sense and fills out a little bit of the character who he is. So he takes him out, and then in the background you see Kira's ship take off and leave. And Chewie and Han are now a little couple together. They're going to stay together for quite a long time. And so we just have one little thing we got to close out on this movie after they give the fuel to the Marauders. And the Marauders say, hey, this has started something. This isn't just some fuel for us. This is a movement, a rebellion. I mean, I think they left it because they didn't overplay it. We're meeting with the Organas. We're Princess. They didn't do anything because they just went with, and they didn't even tie it directly back to anything because I think they played just subtle enough that I dug it. I dug a rebellion. We need warriors like you. You should join us. And nice little setup for who he is, where he's at in life, where he's like, nah, don't hold your breath. I'm not joining any rebellion. I'm not. That is not who I am. So they take off. They got one thing left to do. There's a ship that Han wants. And so they show up and kind of it's a nice little mirror to the sequence where Han and Lando meet up at Cloud City and Empire Strikes Back with the hug. And they like, you dirty low ground after what you pull. And that it's like the reverse of that one, but there's being buddies. And in this, Han notices the card. So he pulls him in. Like that's the thing. He goes, I better pull him in a hug so I can do the sleight of hand. Pulls the card out of his hand. As these are guys hustling each other, they're playing each other, play the cards. Han is the better card player, or maybe we'll find out at some point in time Han is also cheating in his own way. But he wins, and there's this nice little, if you'd had this guy right here, you could have beat me, but you don't. Boom! Han wins, the Millennium Falcon flies off, credits roll. Anyway, there's my talking through my different kind of thoughts on it. Watching the second time had basically all the same feelings as before. No real changes at all. Couple things in here I noticed that I thought worked together pretty nicely. A couple things I noticed that were a little bit more annoying, but same exact feels. Solid adventure. I want to see more stories like this. This is what I want the spin-off movies to be, minus the Han Solo aspect. I don't want them to think of a character that I know and be like, that's how we'll market the movie. I want them to make movies that don't have to be big $250 million blockbusters. You could have made this movie for $100 million. And maybe the original budget was something like 150. I don't know. They could have made this movie a lot cheaper with the type of story they were telling, which it didn't need to have a ton of big sequences and big CGI and things like that. It's a heist movie. And then, the final, little act of the movie, it's, them with some tents around them, and it's them in one room having a shootout and things like that. Very much a Western in space. It's like Firefly. It's like Firefly. And so I just don't. I want them to do things like that. I want the spin-off movies to tell different types of stories. That aspect of this movie I loved. Han Solo prequel, I just never bought these two guys playing these characters that I know and love. I just never saw it. So, and then likewise, a few too many look, that's where Lando got the idea to dress up like that. I didn't need some of that stuff, but overall, a movie that I really dug. I enjoyed it a good bit. My score might go up on it, if anything. It didn't go down, but certainly my enjoyment. And quality of the movie, probably sticking at a B. Enjoyment, I might bump that one up a little bit. Going without pretense and just, this was just a fun adventure. I think I noticed how the middle slowing down a little bit more on the second viewing. I picked up on that. I did watch some other people's reviews and they'd mentioned that, so maybe I was a little bit more self-aware or conscious of it. Likewise, I had two kids with me. So as I was watching the movie and things slowed down, and so then they become a little bit more like fidgeting around and things like that, I noticed a little bit more when that happened because I then had to parent them because they were not behaving appropriately in a movie. So anyway, that's my take on it. I'm sure I missed some things. At the same time, this video is over an hour long. So if you like long videos where I talk and you vacuum in the background or whatever, you mow the lawn while you watch my stuff, here it is, my nice long take on the movie. How about you guys? What did you think about it? Tell me down below in the comment section. And if you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, TV reviews, ranking videos. The key thing is I don't want to just talk about movies. Though apparently I want to talk about this movie for an hour and 5 minutes. I want to talk about movies with you, so please join me down in the comment section. Let's have a lively discussion, and let me know if you want me to keep doing these very long spoiler reviews. And as always, thank you for watching.